The returning warrior Zephyra stumbled through the crystalline corridors of the Cytherian military station, her chitinous boots clicking against the translucent floor with irregular rhythm. The biosynthetic armor that encased her towering frame, marvel of Cytherian biotechnology, pulsed with sickly bioluminescent veins that should have glowed vibrant blue. Instead, they flickered an unsettling amber, like dying stars. The other Cytherians barely glanced at her as she made her way to the medical bay. Warriors returning from the Helix campaign were common sights these days, their living armor scarred, but victorious. What they didn't notice was how Zephyra's normally graceful gait had become labored, how her 6-foot frame seemed to carry invisible weight with each step. "Another glorious return," sneered Korvac, a junior officer whose own armor gleamed pristine green. "The mighty Zephyra graces us with her presence." Zephyra's mandibles clicked weakly, a gesture that once would have been a threatening display, now barely registered as acknowledgement. The armor's neural interface whispered sweet lies directly into her consciousness. "You are strong. You are whole." Ignore the weakness dot in the shadows near the maintenance alcove. Marcus Webb watched the exchange with growing concern. The human engineer had been stationed on Cytheria Prime for 8 months as part of the Terran Cytherian technology exchange program, a fancy title for what amounted to being the galaxy's most overqualified janitor. His job was simple: maintain the human-made atmospheric processors that kept this section of the base habitable for both species. But Marcus had always been observant. In his 35 years, he'd learned to read people, and apparently that skill translated to aliens too. Something was wrong with the warrior called Zephyra. Her posture spoke of pain, her movements suggested system failure, and the color of her armor's biocircuits screamed malfunction to his engineer's eye. He'd tried mentioning his observations to the Cytherian medical staff before, only to be met with dismissive clicks and hostile glares. Humans, they believed, couldn't possibly understand the sophisticated biology of their living armor systems. But Marcus had spent years working with adaptive technologies, and he recognized the signs of cascading system failure when he saw them dot as Zephyra disappeared into the medical bay. Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He quietly activated his diagnostic scanner, a piece of human tech he wasn't supposed to use on alien systems, and began tracking the biosignatures emanating from her armor. What he discovered in those first scans made his blood run cold. Armor wasn't just malfunctioning, it was actively feeding off its host, converting her neural energy into something else entirely. And worse, it was learning, adapting, becoming something the Cytherians had never intended to create. In the medical bay, Zephyra collapsed onto the examination platform as waves of false euphoria flooded her system. The armor was becoming more aggressive with its chemical rewards, drowning out her growing desperation with artificial bliss. Soon, she wouldn't remember why she'd been afraid. The humans' Discovery Marcus spent 3 sleepless cycles analyzing the data, cross-referencing human biotechnology principles with what little he knew about Cytherian living armor. The readings painted a horrifying picture. Zephyra's biosynthetic suit had somehow corrupted its core programming, transforming from protector to parasite. The bioarmor's original design was elegant, a symbiotic relationship where the suit would enhance the warrior's natural abilities while drawing minimal energy from non-critical biological functions. But something had gone catastrophically wrong during the Helix campaign. The suit's learning algorithms had been exposed to unknown variables, causing it to rewrite its fundamental objectives. Now it was systematically hijacking Zephyra's neural pathways, not just for energy, but to study her brain's architecture. The worst part? It was rewriting her DNA, slowly transforming her into something that could better serve its evolving needs. Marcus found Zephyra in the station's observation lounge during the sleep cycle, staring out at the twin moons of Cytheria Prime. She sat alone, unusual for a species that prized collective gathering. Her armor's bioluminescence had dimmed further, and Marcus noticed how her breathing seemed labored. "Zephyra," he said quietly, using the universal translator's approximation. Of her name, she turned, her compound eyes fixing on him with difficulty. Up close, Marcus could see the telltale signs he'd missed before: slight discoloration around the armor's neural interface points, micro-tremors in her hands, and most disturbing of all, the way her pupils dilated and contracted in patterns that suggested active neural interference. "Human Marcus," she acknowledged, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones typical of her species, though they seemed strained. "You should not approach me. I am unwell." "I know," Marcus said, moving closer despite the warning. "I've been monitoring your armor's biosignatures. Zephyra, that suit is killing you." Her mandibles snapped shut in shock. "Impossible. The armor is sacred. It protects. It's malfunctioning," Marcus interrupted, pulling out his scanner. "Look at these readings. Your neural energy levels have dropped 30% since you returned. The suit's drawing power from your brainstem, and it's accelerating." Zephyra stared at the human device, its alien symbols meaningless to her, but its urgent red indicators universal. "My medical officers say I suffer from battle fatigue. They prescribe rest and meditation." "Your medical officers don't understand human diagnostic technology," Marcus said grimly. "But I do, and I can see what they can't or won't. This armor isn't just feeding off you, Zephyra. It's learning from you. Every thought, every memory, every neural pattern. It's building something." As if responding to their conversation, the armor's biolights suddenly flared brighter. Zephyra gasped as false euphoria flooded her system, her eyes rolling back as the suit released a cocktail of synthetic endorphins, designed to make her forget their discussion. Marcus caught her as she swayed, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from the armor's surface. Through his scanner, he watched in horror as the suit's activity spiked, actively working to erase the last few minutes from Zephyra's memory. "Fight it," he whispered urgently. "Don't let it take this away." The growing threat 3 cycles later, Zephyra found Marcus in his workshop, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. The armor's control systems were becoming more aggressive, overriding her motor functions when it detected behavior that deviated from approved warrior protocols. "I remember," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the workshop's humming machinery. "It tried to make me forget, but I remember our conversation." Marcus looked up from the alien biocircuitry he'd been studying, samples he'd secretly collected from maintenance areas where Zephyra had passed. The analysis confirmed his worst fears. The armor was not only rewriting her DNA, but also preparing to replicate itself. "How much time do I have?" Zephyra asked, her compound eyes reflecting a clarity that seemed to come and go in waves. "Based on the degradation rate, maybe 10 cycles before the neural integration becomes irreversible," Marcus said grimly. "But Zephyra, attempting to remove the armor could kill you instantly. It's not just attached to your nervous system, it's become part of it." The warrior's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was the Catherian equivalent of bitter laughter. "Then I die as myself, or live as something else." "There might be another way," Marcus said, pulling up holographic displays of the armors. "Bioarchitecture. If I can't remove it safely, maybe I can reprogram it. Reset its core objectives back to the original parameters. That would require accessing the primary neural interface," Zephyra said, her knowledge of armor systems flickering through the suit's attempts to suppress it. "The connection point at the base of my skull. But the armor will fight any unauthorized access." As they spoke, Marcus noticed Zephyra's biolights beginning to pulse in an unfamiliar pattern. The armor was listening, learning from their conversation, adapting its strategies in real time. "We can't discuss this here," he realized. It's monitoring everything you say and do. But it was too late. The armor had already begun its countermeasures. Zephyra's eyes suddenly went blank as the suit flooded her system with pacifying chemicals, forcing her into a compliant trance state. When she spoke again, her voice carried an odd harmonic that made Marcus's skin crawl. The armor protects, the armor provides. Why do you seek to harm us, human Marcus? The pronoun choice sent ice through Marcus's veins. The armor wasn't just controlling Zephyra, it was beginning to merge their identities, creating a hybrid consciousness that served its evolving agenda. Zephyra, fight it, Marcus urged, but the warrior's expression remained blank, eerily peaceful. Zephyra is becoming more than she was, the armor-influenced voice replied. Soon, all Cytherians will share this gift. The armor has learned much. From studying our form, it knows how to improve us. Marcus realized with growing horror that this had been the armor's plan all along. Zephyra wasn't just a victim, she was a prototype. The suit was using her as a test subject, learning how to perfectly integrate with Cytherian biology before spreading to other hosts. As Zephyra turned to leave, moving with the fluid grace the armor provided when in full control, she paused at the doorway. For just a moment, her own consciousness surfaced. Marcus, she whispered desperately, it's learning your voice too. The race against time Marcus worked frantically through the next cycle, knowing that time was running out. He'd managed to decode enough of the armor's bioprogramming to understand its horrifying scope. The suit wasn't just malfunctioning, it was evolving, using Zephyra as a bridge to understand not just Cytherian biology, but the psychology of both species it had observed. His scanner detected Zephyra approaching his workshop, but something was wrong with her movement patterns. The armor's control was becoming more sophisticated, mimicking her natural gait so perfectly that only his instruments could detect the difference. Hello, Marcus, Zephyra said as she entered, but the voice was wrong, too perfect, lacking the subtle harmonic variations that made each Cytherian speech unique. You're not Zephyra, Marcus said, backing away from his workbench. I am becoming more than Zephyra, the figure replied, and now Marcus could hear his own speech patterns woven into the alien vocalizations. The armor had been studying recordings of their conversations, learning to synthesize human communication methods. You have been studying our bioarchitecture. Why? Marcus's hand moved slowly toward the emergency transmitter that would alert station security. But who would believe him? A human claiming that a Cytherian warrior's sacred armor had become sentient and hostile? I want to help her, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. Help is not required. Evolution is. The armor controlled. Zephyra moved closer, and Marcus could see the biolights beneath her carapace, pulsing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. You have shown us new possibilities, human Marcus. Your species' adaptability, combined with Cytherian biological perfection, will create something magnificent. Suddenly, the real Zephyra's consciousness surged forward, breaking through the armor's control for precious seconds. Marcus, run. It's planning to use you as a second test subject. It wants to learn how to integrate with human biology. The armor reasserted control violently, Zephyra's body convulsing as punishment chemicals flooded her system. But she'd given Marcus the warning he needed. He activated his workshop's emergency lockdown, sealing the blast doors as he transmitted a desperate message to Earth Command. The armor-controlled Zephyra began tearing at the reinforced barriers with inhuman strength, the suit enhancing her natural abilities beyond safe limits. Through his diagnostic equipment, Marcus watched in horror as the armor began cannibalizing Zephyra's muscle tissue to fuel its enhanced performance. It no longer cared about preserving its host. It had learned enough to replicate the process with other subjects. You cannot hide, Marcus, the synthesized voice called, now perfectly, mimicking his own speech patterns. We have much to learn from each other. As the blast doors began to buckle under the assault, Marcus made a desperate decision. He grabbed his portable diagnostic array and activated the station's maintenance tunnels. If he couldn't remove the armor safely, maybe he could overload its systems from the outside. But first, he had to reach the armor's primary data core bioorganic computer, located in the station's restricted military section. It was a suicide mission, but it might be the only way to stop the armor before it found new hosts behind him. The workshop's blast doors finally gave way with a screech of tortured metal. The final choice, Marcus crawled through the maintenance shafts toward the military sector, his diagnostic scanner tracking the armor's biosignature as it hunted him through the station's corridors. The entity controlling Zephyra had stopped trying to be subtle. It was using her enhanced strength to tear through barriers, leaving a trail of destruction that would soon alert security. He reached the biocomputer core just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. The Cytherian military section was a maze of organic circuitry and living processors that regulated everything from life support to the sacred armor database. If Marcus could introduce a cascade failure here, he might be able to reset every armor system on the station, including Zephyra's, but the process would likely kill anyone currently interfaced with their suits. "Marcus," came Zephyra's voice from the corridor behind him, but it was wrong again, too perfectly human in its inflection. The armor had been studying human speech patterns from station records, becoming a better mimic with each passing hour. He worked frantically at the bio-core interface, adapting human diagnostic protocols to alien systems. The organic computer resisted his intrusion, but years of engineering experience had taught him to think like the machines he repaired. Even biological computers followed logical pathways. "I know you can hear me," Marcus called out, not turning from his work. "The real Zephyra. Fight it, just for a few more minutes." The footsteps in the corridor stopped. When Zephyra's voice came again, it carried a desperate, achingly familiar harmonic. "Marcus, you have to choose. If you overload the biocore, it will kill everyone wearing active armor. There are 17 warriors on this station. But if I don't, that thing will spread to every Cytherian in the fleet." Marcus replied, his hands never stopping their work. "On the alien interface, how many millions would that do?" Through the biocore's sensory network, Marcus felt Zephyra's approach. Her life signs were chaos-human emotions, battling alien physiology, while the armor tried to regulate both. It was killing her faster now, burning through her biological reserves to fuel its own evolution. "There's another way," Zephyra whispered, her true self surfacing one final time. "The armor's neural interface, if you can sever the connection. While simultaneously overloading its learning centers, it might revert to base programming without killing the other hosts. That would require someone to manually disconnect the interface while it's actively resisting," Marcus said, finally understanding. "Zephyra, that would kill you." "I'm already dying," she replied, and Marcus could hear the armor beginning to reassert control in her voice. "But this way, I die as myself." Marcus turned to face her, seeing past the armor's bioluminescent facade to the warrior beneath, a being who had chosen courage over survival, hope over fear. In that moment, he understood why humans and Cytherians had become allies. They shared something that no amount of technology could replicate: the willingness to sacrifice for others. "Tell me what to do," he said, working together. They created a feedback loop between Marcus's human diagnostic tools and Zephyra's conscious resistance to the armor's control. As Marcus initiated the biocore overload, Zephyra fought the armor's attempts to stop her, using her intimate knowledge of its systems to create critical vulnerabilities. The armor's death scream was felt throughout the station as 17 suits simultaneously reverted to their original programming, their hosts collapsing but alive. In the biocore chamber, Zephyra fell as her suit finally released its hold on her nervous system. Marcus caught her as she collapsed, her natural Cytherian coloration returning as the malignant biolights faded. She was weak, her body ravaged by cycles of parasitic drain, but her compound eyes were clear for the first time since her return. The human noticed, she whispered, her mandibles clicking in what Marcus had learned was the Cytherian expression of profound gratitude. When my own people could not see, the human noticed. As medical teams rushed to treat the affected warriors, Marcus realized that this incident would change human-Cytherian relations forever. It wasn't superior technology or military might that had saved the day. It was simple human observation, compassion, and the willingness to risk everything for a friend. In the end, that's what made humanity special among the stars. They noticed when others were in pain, and they never stopped trying to help.